There's loads of spaces now.
Coming in via bingo, isn't it?
Good evening. Just testing that the sound works.
She's on.
Good evening. Just checking that the microphone works. Ready for the meeting at 6:15. Can someone let me know, please? So, good evening, councillors, and welcome our first part of our meeting, which is an informal discussion. So Mike Kavanagh, the Head of Cultural, Leisure, Tourism and Registration Services, which is quite a lengthy title. Thank you, Mike, for agreeing to come and visit us at quite short notice, actually, based on the public consultation last week at the library, which I know a number of us attended. The purpose of this is to listen to Mike, really, and the difficulties with the library, particularly Haven. An opportunity for questions and answers with Mike. I will say we have had at least 3 or 4 questions from members of the public. 3 are related directly to us, so they'll come under agenda item 3 in the full council meeting. 1 is more relevant to Mike, so I'll ask that a little bit later on. And then just to remind us that this is the information part. The next full council then at the 24th of February will be when we make a formal decision based on a formal approach from Mike. But without any further ado, I'll ask Mike to lead us in discussion. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the invite. Now, obviously, some of you were at the event in the library last week and some of you weren't. So for those who were, apologies that there might be a bit of repetition because you'll have heard things. And I don't plan to say too much because I'd rather have more time for your questions and a sort of questions and answers session. So in terms of what are the key things you probably need to know, some stuff you probably already know, which is Pembrokeshire County Council is facing the largest deficit in its history. So this year, right now, or at least in the last week, the latest information I have is that we've got a £27.4 million funding gap. That's higher than we've ever had. And that's then reflected in the different options that have been considered for different services in terms of what we have to reduce our own budgets to contribute to coming in on a balanced budget at the council meeting later this month. So in previous years, now I came in 2012, and for the first sort of 6 months or so in post, there weren't any cuts. We were doing okay as an organisation. And then they started in 2013 and they haven't stopped since. But more or less, it's been about between 3% and 7% that I've needed to cut each of my services each year for the last 12 years, which has been really difficult to do whilst trying to have the least impact possible on the public. Because if you think about that, that's every year 3%, or sometimes 5%, sometimes 7%, every year having to cut. This year is unprecedented because I've been asked to look at options, to model options around a 10% cut, a 20% cut, a 30% cut, and a 60% cut. Now, as you can imagine, things like the 60% cut don't look very pretty and involve library closures. How can they not, after all of that? But what it looks like, and it's certainly not a done deal by any stretch, it would have to be, agreed by the 60 councillors later this month. But I think it's likely to be a 20% cut. That's dependent on council's decision, but that's what I'm working on the basis of. If that changes after that meeting, then I'm told I've got to make more or less. Well, obviously that changes the situation. We'd need to have a fresh discussion, but based on an assumption of a 20% cut, which is massive, I've looked across the whole service at what is the best way to achieve, one, savings that can actually be delivered. There's no point in offering something up that I can't deliver, because that just gives us a headache in the financial year. We've got a hole, but also what's going to have the least possible impact on the communities that we're served. So that's the sort of double header in my head. And so there's a whole range of different things I'm looking to do. And the proposal for Milford, you'll have seen there's sort of three options we're looking at. There's the community management partnership, there's the sharing of space in the library, and there's potential relocation. And they're based on the work that we did last summer, or the library needs assessment, where we did a very big engagement exercise, lots of sessions. We did public meetings. Are you okay? Can you hear me?
No, you're getting quieter, Mike.
I'm getting quieter. Okay, thank you. So, public meetings. We had one in Milford Haven. surveys, one-to-ones, etc., and the feedback on what were the things that people could most live with, if you like, in terms of reduced was, all right.
It's just another person coming in, sorry.
Okay, was volunteer involvement, premises costs. Those were the two things that came highest out of the options, that the ideas that we were coming up with last summer. So because of that feedback, that's led me to consult on those three options. But we had the public meeting. The purpose of the public meeting really was about the community managed library option, because it's quite a complex option to explain on paper. So I wanted to have a meeting to be able to explain it in greater detail and answer questions. Perhaps naively, I thought that might be the way that the meeting would go. And there were some people in the audience who did want to ask questions about that option. But there were also plenty of people in the audience who basically wanted to challenge why cuts had to happen to the library in any case, which is understandable. People were passionate about the library, and God, I'm glad they are. Wouldn't it be awful if no one turned up, or a few people turned up and said, yeah, do what you like. You know, it's actually a good thing that people are passionate about the library. So, you know, I left that meeting thinking, actually, you know, people were thinking, oh, that's really terrible, that was really hard. But actually, for me, it shows that people care. So I think that was a good outcome. And hopefully also it's a good outcome in that it's led me here to a conversation with you, which may or may not end up being instructive and may help to protect the library. So I think I've probably said enough by way of background. Really, I wanted the opportunity to answer your questions so that when I come back formally later in the month, you've got all the information you need to make an informed decision one way or the other in terms of any financial support you can give. Thank you.
Anyone starting questions? Mr. Jones?
I'm wondering, why do we have? Yeah.
Okay.
Council taxes have been going up since 2013.
Yeah.
We're getting less for it. I mean, do you know what I mean? Why?
Yeah. So there's a few things here to say. So let's think about before austerity started. So before 2010, when UK government decided to put less money into the public sector. So in those years before then, the authority was managed in a way I'd describe as a tight ship, as efficiently as possible, which you would generally expect. And so council tax was kept low, and you know, we tried to deliver good services, but being careful, not spending too much. And so it was already in a position where there wasn't a lot of fat. Now, there are some other authorities that have got, I would describe, a bit more fat at that point. Right? So straight away, when we went into austerity and we started seeing smaller increases, is a more accurate way to describe it, because as you say, the budget's going up. But as we started to see smaller increases, there was a gap. And we were in a not as good a position to be able to address that gap as some other authorities. So that's point one. The second point then is, so the budget is increasing, but the cost of delivering what we're delivering is increasing by a greater margin. So what we're seeing is an increase in the budget, but a bigger increase in the cost of delivering services. And a lot of people get confused by that. They think, well, if you're not being cut, what's going on? But some of the reasons why that's an issue now, since COVID, we've had a 180% increase in homelessness. So there's been a lot of extra costs around addressing that. We've also in recent years had a big increase in children presenting with special educational needs, specific packages. And there's a big cost pressure around children as a result. And we've also seen a big increase in the need for adult care in terms of social care. So some big pressures from social care. If you look at the demographics in the county, we're an elderly county. We've got a much higher proportion of people above 60, and particularly above 75, than in other parts of Wales. And so people are living longer, which is a good thing, but also that comes with additional cost. So we're seeing all these extra pressures, and they are much more costly than the extra money we get in. And that's why there's a gap, and that gap keeps increasing.
Mike, just based on back on that question, specific to Milford Haven Library, what is the current deficit or the funding gap, sorry, in terms of being able to keep status quo? for this next financial year.
Okay, so there's no set figure. I have to balance my budget, and when I say my budget, I'm talking about libraries, museums, archives, tourism, various different services. So yeah, exactly. So I need to get to, because it all comes down to the same bottom line, PCC budget, isn't it? So typically over the last decade, I have saved more in some areas than others based on what I think can be delivered and what the impact is on the communities. But sometimes leisure might have taken a bigger hit than libraries, another year it might be museums and so on. This year I've been given a more specific requirement. I want you to look at 10, 20, 30 and 60% for libraries. So it's been a little more difficult to look at other areas of the portfolio in that regard. It's been more targeted. So 20% is about £250,000. Okay, so the budget for libraries is about 1.25 million. So that's a big chunk of saving to take out. So I just need to find the best way to make 250,000 from the library service as a whole. Homing in on your question about Milford Haven, originally I had a higher figure in mind. As I said last week, I was originally looking at a potential option of could it move to the leisure centre? And if it could have done, then we would have saved on the rates because we've already got that building. We would have saved on the rent. And, the leisure centre is a massive user of electricity already. So just adding the library wouldn't have made much of a difference. So, possible a bit of saving there, but it would still increase that. But anyway, I was looking at something in the region of that could have saved about 50 grand, right? I don't think that's viable. As I said last week, we've looked at it in greater detail. I think it would be really, really difficult to get it in there. I think it would be costly, it would be time consuming. And unless we compromise something significant in that building, move the gym or something, and then there's costs, you'd have to have it in two different parts of the building. I think that would be difficult. So I've moved away from that option. I've looked at other ways of saving across the portfolio. And for Milford Haven, I need a minimum of 13,000 now. So I've reduced it very significantly. So 1-3. So what I am needing to keep Milford Haven Library going is £13,000 per annum. That's where we are.
That's existing, to keep it the existing things.
Yes, so that would mean no changes at all. For this financial year, that will keep it where it is with the staff, with the hours, everything the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, that's literally just asked my next question. I was going to be blunt and say, what do you want from us? Is going to be my question. So you just answered that. Thank you.
Thank you. Fun enough, that's going to be my question as well. But this is more of an observation as such. We've already done our precept for the year, so this comes at a very awkward time for us because no matter how we turn, in a sense, we look bad to the general public. Because if we don't support it, it looks bad. If we do support it, we have no alternative but to dig into our, like yours, somewhat dwindling reserves, or we have to find, and I don't know if it's even legal, to redo the precept. Those are our three basic options. There's two options then, so we can't redo the precept. That's the observation. 13,000 is not an inconsiderable sum for the council. I personally went to the library about 15 months ago, 12 months ago, so over there. I'm in charge of the working group looking for our accommodation, our home, because obviously we don't have the town hall anymore. And I was told at the time by the manager of the library that it would not be suitable for the council to move into because of access reasons of evening. It has to be open for members of the public coming to the council meetings and various other logistical issues. So that being the case, how can you look at trying to farm out the existing building you're currently in unless you're going to offer purely daytime access to it?
Okay. Well, I'm not familiar with that feedback that you've had, and certainly the manager, who was the manager then and is the manager now, is keen for you to move it.
Sorry.
Yes. No, that's fine. But what I can tell you now is absolutely, it would be great if you wanted to come and use the library for your meetings. I think what she was probably talking about was the fact that it's on a first floor, and therefore we have certain requirements around safety for egress of people with mobility disabilities. So we have to train our staff in something called an evac chair, so that we can evacuate people in that instance, because it's not a fire lift, and even if it was, you still sometimes have to do that. So it might have been logistical issues around that, in that you could, for example, have a public meeting. Someone wants to come in, yes, they can get up in a lift if they're in a wheelchair, or if they can't manage stairs for another reason. But then if there was a fire, you would all need to be trained, or we'd need to have staff in who are trained. We just need to work through the operational detail of making sure everyone's safe. I would guess it was that was the issue. I can't think of any other issues.
Also about the public having access to the building of an evening out of hours as such. But I can't recall much more than that.
Maybe around safety of stock and whatnot. But I think these are things that are overcomable.
That's a hot spot.
Just following on from Councillor Woodward's Councillor Woodward's point, with the £13,000 deficit that you have this year, say that the town council were to fill that hypothetically, just this is totally hypothetical, then next year there was an even bigger funding gap that we weren't able to fulfill. Then we do look bad and say, you know, if we couldn't afford it, we're pulling out of it. So what assurances can you give that we're not going to be in exactly the same position next year?
Okay, so I can't give 100% guarantees about the future. Our medium-term financial plan suggests that we're going to be in a difficult financial position for the next 2 to 3 years. So I would anticipate, given that we've had 13 years of this, that it's going to continue. I think that's a reasonable assumption. What I can tell you is that there are 9 other local authorities in the county who make financial contributions to their local library. So the only ones that don't are Crymych, and I've just written to them asking them to consider that, Pembroke Dock and yourselves. So there are the 9 others. Now, some of those have been supporting their local library since around 2015, and those libraries are still going and haven't been particularly touched since those investments from the town council. So I think history shows you that town councils that invest in their local library, it makes it more likely that I will look elsewhere savings, because I clearly don't want to cut a library that the town council is investing in. I wouldn't want to lose the money, that investment, but also if you're willing to put money in, then I'm willing to try and keep it going, you know, so it's a sort of reciprocal thing. Having said that, if I get asked to make 60% cuts next year, all bets are off, aren't they? But you know, then you could pull your funding in that case. So I haven't got a crystal ball. I can't tell you the future. My best guess is continued cuts, and I would give as much protection as I can, but without being able to give guarantees. What you could do is, if you were minded to give funding, but there were certain things that go kind of beyond the line for you, that if we did in the future, we could put that within an agreement that says, for instance, we're prepared to fund, but only if you don't do A, B, and C. And the point at which you do A, B, and C, we've got the right to stop funding it. That might give you some protection, because I can't give you a guarantee. So without that guarantee, maybe putting in some protections for you might be the best way of addressing that issue.
Councillor Graver next.
Not personally directed to you, sure, but I find it really hard to turn yet again here that another public facility from Milford is on the brink of closing. Yes, PCT, or the local authority, chose to sell off our old library. They chose to sell off the old town hall and relocate this, and now they can't afford to do that now. And yet it always seems to be the artists of Milford and the grassroots street level things that we need is always the first to be to pull a plug on, and it's really not fair. And if you're in charge of all the different areas, and you're good at finding monies from pots from your other things. Can you not find food in case say 2 from here, 3 from there? You looked at that?
Okay, thank you. So 3 parts to that. I wasn't here when we moved, and I'm not defending the position, but what I would tell you is it was in 2009. That was 16 years ago, without the benefit of hindsight. So, you know, I'm not sure, you know, it was a long time ago. Anyway, I'll say no more on that one. In terms of first to pull the plug around public services, well, as I said, we've been making savings for 13 years. So I've done all the stuff that's behind the scenes. You know, I've reduced the teams down, I've reduced the book fund, I've reduced our energy costs by putting in energy efficient things years ago, a decade ago, in terms of things like energy efficiency, energy optimization, solar panels, all that kind of stuff. So we're trying to do all of that stuff first before we start doing stuff that hits the public. Believe me, we have. But after 12, 13 years of it, and it still carries on, you run out of other things you can do. And I have run out of other things that I can do to make those savings. And the final point about could I find it elsewhere? Well, remember, I had a target of over 50,000 for Milford. I've already been through that exercise and taken 37 off it. I cannot find another penny from somewhere else. 13 is the bare minimum. I cannot find it anywhere else now.
Okay, Councillor Bridges, you were next.
Very good points. First of all, just to expand on I understand the difficult position that you're in, because I understand a lot of people hold you as the face of this being responsible, but ultimately it's the county councillors who vote on the budget. You can't answer to them. Ultimately, higher than that, you've got the elected assembly members of large government who also set a higher budget that goes to the authority, and you talk about the MPs at Westminster, so I understand that it's all above your head, and you're ultimately the one who's dealt with it. So thank you for sitting here and taking our questions. I know that you won't take the brunt of it, and it's not necessarily your fault. And I just want to put on record, I find it fascinating, also horrified, but based on the figures that you meet, it's anywhere between 3 and 7%. But if it was the maximum of that, that means effectively you've got the budget by 84% in the last 12 years, which is, I can't even imagine how you could have done that. So to keep it going in any capacity at that level, I think deserves credit for some, you know, even if it's midway between the 60%, that still boggles me that you've been able to keep it going in any way, shape, or fashion. So I know it's not, you know, it's not positive anyway, but nevertheless, I'm sure that was a challenge within itself. But I go back to a question I asked you at the meeting, and I hope now that you've got the consent to answer this, because there was a lot of coverage about this in the press since that meeting. And I again take on board the fact that you say it happened 16 years ago, but there's a lot of bad feeling over the financial difference of the disposal value of that building versus what's been paid in lease value on that building. It doesn't make any sense to the overall figures, just completely one side to the other. So could I ask, are you now able to give the information, how much are we paying in rent for that building currently per year? What is the annual cost for? Because you did mention that it was the only building that is currently subject to a lease agreement. I think the public are, you know, that it was a question everybody was asking. Yep. Are you in a position to answer that now, what the rent is on that building?
So I'm not. The position is I engaged with the landlord, and I was anticipating that we would be sending out a press release soon with the figure. I've been asked for now by the landlord not to give the figure. And so I need to check with our legal department on whether I can continue to do that, because you've got, obviously the landlord is a private business. We're a tenant, so I need to respect the landlord's wishes, but equally we're a public organisation and there are requirements to provide public information. So I just need to check what wins out in that kind of head-to-head, if you like. I anticipate that would be releasing the information. I think that will come. It's just I'm not able right now to tell you. I think it will come in the coming days.
So I don't think I can say this press this week, and I believe that the comments. It wasn't one of the comments. So I'm going to put this out there as a speculation. It was speculated that the rent is £50,000 a year. Now, if that were an accurate figure in the scheme of things, based on your budget deficit, 250,000, that's a huge portion of that. It's just the rent alone on that building. So I understand that the predicament you to a different premises. Available premises in Milford, obviously, that are suitable. So I understand the predicament you're in, but I apologise if this seems nonsensical to you, but I'm just curious because I received an email today, which I believe all of the councillors has, from one central ward constituent, which was basically over the location of it having been moved from the centre of town, and could it be relocated? I am just curious to know, has any conversations been had with Mr. Evans? Because I just have an idea in my head about the Murray Suite. I'm just thinking that the Murray Suite, the former town hall, is ground floor. And I don't believe that he's, I'm just thinking in my head that the potential that he might offer that at a rent-free would be a fraction of what we're currently paying on the premises. Now, there are other councils who might have a better suggestion than that, but I'm just thinking to myself, is it a possibility? Because ultimately, I don't believe Mr. Evans is using the full capacity of that building at the moment. And, he does have a very keen interest in trying to invest in this town. I know there's been some negative comments about him purchasing the buildings, but that wasn't his fault. Ultimately, somebody was going to buy them. And I'm glad to see that there's someone important who's invested in the town and one of our biggest employers. That's a great thing. But ultimately, I think that there is a possibility there. I again appreciate what you're saying about a capital move to move it anyway. But I'm just curious to know, is that a discussion that you might be open to having to see long term down the road? As you say, we don't know what it could be reduced again. So just to continue looking to ensure a potential backup should you need to move in the future, should you have more budget cuts down the line, are you being very proactive and looking outside the box for alternative locations to cut that huge rental payment, which seems to be a big sticking point on the budget?
Yeah, I'm certainly open to all options. I need to be mindful that we're in a consultation, and I need to also listen to what people say in that consultation. And my services, we do pride ourselves on listening to public feedback. You often get people say, oh, well, it's a done deal when the council are doing consultations, but actually you look at the evidence base of the consultations I've done over the last decade, and it's really good evidence there that I listen to what people say and we try and change it. You only need to look at Milford Haven last year with the opening hours. We were looking to close on a Friday afternoon, where a lot of people say, please don't do that because of the asymmetric school week. We've got young people who need to use it. We listened to that and we changed it, and we didn't close on Friday afternoon. So I need to be mindful about that. That's one point. I think the second one is keep working with the property department, looking at different options as they come up, whether it's council buildings, whether it's privately owned buildings. So this is one that wasn't on my radar, but I'm certainly happy to have a look. My strategy, I think, is, and this is developing as we've had the meeting last week and we're having this discussion, but if you were minded to support to the tune of 13,000 per year, then that protects the library for a year, and it buys me time to look at some of these other options. And in particular, I think one of the other things we're looking at doing is, can we share the space? It's a big library, and one member of the group from the public last week at the public meeting came to me at the end of the meeting and said, you've got lots of gaps and space. There's a lot of space in here. You could put things a bit closer together. You could easily make space without necessarily losing stock. And so, there is that to think about. So if we could find a suitable third party that might be, I don't know what they might do. It could be, I remember my time in Lincolnshire when I managed the library service there, we developed a library with a pharmacy. So it was in a little village called Waddington, just outside Lincoln, and we shared a space. So half of it was pharmacy and half was library. It was all open plan, and that worked really well. So I know it can happen. It could be a different third party. Could be maybe a cafe or a shop, and then dependent on if it wasn't suitable for part of an open plan, then you're looking at, could you create partitions and have a library space that's smaller and a third party. So as well as moving out, I think we also need to think about anyone who could move in. So that's the other option I'm thinking, and that would give me time to look at those. And then if we then implemented one of those changes, that might give us another year or another couple of years and maybe get us through this medium-term issue without losing the library and potentially even keeping it on the current site. So that's what I'm thinking, that might be my, my best strategy over the next 2 to 3 years.
Councillor Jones?
Lost rent. Yeah. So you're trying to cut, because wouldn't it make more sense to actually buy a property? It then be a permanent thing, and if it was a large one, to have rent from the sharing, as you say. I gather the old Woolies is up for sale.
No, it's gone to a gym. Yeah, it's a gym being transferred into a gym. Yeah. Yeah.
If it was a suitable building, we could look at it.
The post office was for sale. The old police station was for sale. Do you know what I mean? All these different properties, they've been there. You're not looking into that possibility?
Yeah, well, I'm engaging with the property department on all options, so I'm quite happy to go back to them and say, look, could we consider, is there anything we could buy and rent, and can we make a business case? Whenever we're looking to do that, there's that capital investment, and capital is also a big problem in terms of that investment, because that has to be paid back on revenue, so that just creates a pressure on revenue. So we need to make sure the business case works. So what I'm saying to you is, yes, I'll certainly consider it and add it to our list of options.
Cambridge County Council themselves have a folio.
Well, they do, but they're telling me they've got nothing in Milford that's suitable. That they've come with a couple of options, but they're tiny, they weren't suitable. I've got nothing from property saying, here, how about this one? And me thinking, yeah, that works. Nothing yet.
Less than half of library is now?
About a fifth. About an 80% cut, it would have been. It was tiny. And it didn't have Equality Act compliant access either, so you were looking at ramps and all sorts of things.
Councillor Trott, you're next.
Thank you. I have 2 questions, if I may, Mike. One of them, I think I already know the answer to, because I know what they're like. I deal in another capacity with the same landlord that you're talking about, and they have recently told me that for this property, my rent's going to go up. Have you had any discussions with that landlord? Because this is going to look very bad press for that company, that landlord that is allegedly a community-based organisation. That's one question. And the second one is, as Councillor Woodward said, the 13,000 now, because precept has already been set, would have to come from our very limited reserves. That's not to say that we wouldn't, but is there any way, and I know you can't guarantee that next year it's going to be 13,000, is there any way that, because we set our precept beginning of January, that you would be able to come to us and give us a bit more advance notice should you be requiring our help for the following year?
Okay. So discussions with the landlord. Well, actually, back in 2018, we were looking at moving to the leisure centre. You may recall, at that point, we were looking at the bowling green and compromising the size of that. And there was a big community uproar about that, particularly from a disability group that uses that bowling green, and they didn't want us to do that, and members were minded not to do that. As a result of that discussion, our landlord and ourselves, we negotiated a much improved rental. So they significantly reduced the rental at that point, which kept us going then and since. So I would say our landlord has been very good in that regard. They've reduced it a lot. Now, obviously, I'm a bit compromised, as I said earlier, in terms of not being able to give figures at the moment, but just so you're aware, that's already happened, and they've already gone as low as they realistically can.
That was 2018, that was 7 years ago.
That's again since, and they're saying they can't go any further. Okay, so that discussion's been had. In terms of 13K would have to come from somewhere, and advance notice next time. Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to give advance notice next time.
Yeah.
And appreciate it's difficult because preset, setting has already occurred. I understand that.
Right, lovely, thank you.
Mike, just an observation before I go to, there's two more questions that I'm aware of. The last time you approached us, and obviously we weren't in a position to be able to support at that point, you did give us an option to, what's the word I'm looking for, contribute or invest over multi-years. So, you know, this is the cost for 1 year, but if you did 3 years, then this would be that. Is there a possibility to explore that? Now, obviously this year we would be looking potentially from our reserves if the council was minded to support that, but in future years we can include that as part of our budgeting and planning. So is there an opportunity to look at not just year one but multi-years in terms of best value for money and knowing that you've got that support?
Yeah, there is absolutely. So oftentimes with the agreements that we've got, they're multi-year agreements. They tend to be 5 years. And as a thank you to the council for giving that longer term security to our staff and to customers, that they know they've got that, we've held the figure. So that would also apply here. So what that means is for local councils that decide they're going to fund for 1 year and review every year, then the cost goes up in line with inflation, because obviously our staff get paid more each year and so on. But if you were minded to do a 5-year agreement, it would be 13,000 for each of the next 5 years, and therefore over the course of that 5-year agreement, you'd be saving quite a few £1,000.
Councillor Bridges, you in it?
Just two questions. First of all, I understand the service. Can I just ask just a point of curiosity? You mentioned about the you'd had discussion with the Leisure Centre that not a viable space was available. But can I just ask? Because it seems to me through my own personal dealings with PC that there's a lot of not the left hand not talking to the right as well as it could going on within County Hall. I'm just curious, are you able to know, for instance, I'm just going to spitball you, if one hall only generates £20,000 in higher revenue for an entire year, you're paying out 50,000 in rent, would your need for that space supersede the fact that it's only generating less money than you're paying out in another way? So I'm just curious, do you have access to actually, is it just, you know, I'm not sure what your role with Leisure Services is, but do you have the ability to actually know that you could make a better financial decision with that space, or is it not something that you're able to peer review? They just say that no, it's not suitable and can't have it. I'm just curious to know what sort of depth they give you knowledge on for that space.
And you're talking specifically about the Leisure Centre, are you? Okay, yeah. So leisure comes under me as well. So yeah, we've looked at the spaces there. What leisure do really well, they manage in as a commercial way as possible, given that they are public sector, if that makes sense. So they are the service that acts in the most commercial way of any that I manage and any that I ever have managed in 25 years. They're very commercially minded. And so they're always trying to sweat their assets, every space, trying to get the most from it. So, you know, we looked at it, and if they lost a couple of spaces for the library, then it means there are various classes and programs that they just couldn't do because they couldn't put them elsewhere. And so they'd be losing income potential, potentially losing members who might be disgruntled because a given service isn't there. So, yeah, we have looked at that closely. In terms of that left hand, right hand, you know, PCC is a big organisation. We deliver over 350 services, so there's always going to be occasions when one service doesn't quite know what another's doing. But our property department certainly are working hard to try and join everything up. We have something called corporate asset management group meetings where we look at the whole portfolio. And for instance, I asked through that to all the heads of service, do you need any space? Because before I go out to the public looking for a third party to maybe share the space in this library, maybe share the space in Pembroke Dock Library, I wanted to know if there are any council services that might want to share the space. And I've checked that off and no one does. So I've done that first before I go out looking for, you know, a company say.
Just to quantify what I'm saying, I don't want it to seem like I'm focused on different occasions, but I'm very mindful of the fact that this high rent payment is a looming factor based on what you said, you need to cut your budget by every year since it's not going to go away. So I'm just looking at the fact that I'm personally speaking, and I can't speak for the rest of the town council, but following me going there on Monday and speaking to various individuals, I can see that library as a stand is serving as a community hub as much as a library, certainly an asset to the elderly generation, and that removing that asset again is, you know, very, very a bad thing for the community in general. So I want to try and find a way to try and support it if we can. But I am curious because I know that it's going to be a wide discussion back to Mr. Mayor. Can I ask if you would have an idea that we can obviously, because this is going to be put to this evening, the public is going to want to know. This year it's going to come out of reserves if we do decide to go that way. But should we then look at a multi-year, how much would it increase the precept by and what would effect would that have on the council tax for a local resident? Do we have any idea
What I've got here.
how much that would be? So, because the public seem to have a perception that obviously, you know, we can pay for it. They don't seem to have the connection that that would ultimately mean the council tax would increase. So I just want to get it out there what that would mean to the public.
It's a very good question. Not one that we can answer right now. If the clerk had been here, obviously she's off ill as you're aware, then we might have had the precept calculator with us. But because we're not formally agreeing tonight, what I'll ask the secretary to do is provide that information for us for the 24th of February, so that we can give you the figures.
Maybe like pence or pounds.
Pence.
It's going to be pence. Yeah, it's going to be pence.
Without committing myself to that.
It's the public that's all generally idea what we're talking about.
No, it's a good point.
Because it will be thrown out there that if we do look to do it, you know, because that's a very sensitive subject and as it stands. But I'm sure that the general public in Milford would be, I would think, be supportive of pence over pounds, you know, which is worthwhile.
It's a good indicator actually using that. So the secretary will make sure that we've got that for the next meeting. Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, very quickly. It has pretty much been answered actually. I just wanted to clarify that you are ideally looking at a multi-year term. This is not a case of, even if we agreed to see, if we said we're going to support it for 12 months, you said it buys you time to look at other opportunities. But even if you look at other opportunities, we're probably still going to be, for want of a better term, tied in for a few years into it.
Yeah, I mean, I would much prefer a longer term agreement. I think it's best for everybody. You know, the staff, yourselves, the public, they know where they stand. So yeah, absolutely. In terms of just briefly about the precept, I know Pembroke Town Council asked the public about, they worked out how much it would be on like a band D, and asked people, you know, would you be prepared to pay an extra, whatever it was, 67 pence, you know, to protect your library before they came to their decision. So, you know, others have done it in that way.
I'm out of curiosity, raise that point. You know what the actual feedback was in Pembroke?
The feedback in Pembroke was absolutely supportive of paying to keep the library.
Thank you. That's what you expect it to be, but I'm just curious to mention.
It's a fair point.
Yeah.
Councillor Hartwell, you had your hand up and you'll be the last question for this.
Yeah, pretty much has already been answered. There were a couple of things that I wanted to state. I know there's been a lot of comments made about the rental of the building. And yes, the landlord does have social responsibility, but it does sound like they're already heavily contributing to keeping the library open, and they don't have to because it is a PCC statutory obligation to do that. So with the funding gap that you have, currently 13,000 that you're looking to fill, that would keep the library services going as they are with no cuts to staff hours. That would be able then to keep the library at the level it is now.
That's correct. Yeah.
For 12 months.
Yes.
And then that would be relooked at every year then.
Depending on the financial position of the authority, yeah, and what would it be expected of my services in terms of contribution to balancing the budget, yeah.
Right. So unfortunately, we have run out of time, only because we've got full council. I know there are some other questions. I'm really sorry to have to cut everyone short. Mike, thank you so much for coming to address us this evening. I think, you know, I'm speaking on behalf of everyone, a very useful session, an opportunity to get a bit more clarity and understanding. As I said at the start, that we did have some questions from members of the public, but they're directly related to us, so they'll come up under agenda item 3 for the councillors. And as I said at the start as well, the next step for us is the formal aspect of this, which you'll put in writing to us, to the secretary, and we'll then discuss formally on the 24th of February. We will make a decision and come back to you. I think if anyone does have any desperate questions, if you either want to go direct to Michael via the secretary and we can get those answered before then, or you may decide to wait until we've seen whatever we'll get in writing. But I think again from all of us, Mike, thank you for coming to address us. Clearly the library is important to us, but also to the people of Milford Haven, and it's important that we are having these discussions in this way. So thank you for your support this evening.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone. Okay, have a nice evening.
And you.
So, good evening, councillors, and welcome to tonight's full council meeting. Agenda item 1, apologies.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, apologies have been received from Councillor Kevin Abbott, Nicole Beavis Morrissey, Rhys Sinnott, Yvonne Southwell, Carol Stevens, Guy Woodham, and the Town Clerk, Mrs. Barbara Fitzgerald.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Any councillors? No. Okay, thank you. Agenda item 3 then is question and answer session with members of the public. We have had 3 questions submitted, so I will go through them. The first one is from Mrs. Margaret Evans. I'd like to know if Milford Haven Town Council are in support of keeping the library in the current building. Although there are lots of empty buildings in the town centre, it would appear that it would cost a lot of money to put a building to the standard of the current premises. We need to keep this valuable service and access available for everyone. Also at the meeting, which refers to the public consultation, a few people did not know who their local councillors are. Where do people find a list of them and their contact details, as the town hall is no longer? Not everyone is online to find out all about the local services available or who to contact. So there's obviously 2 elements there. I think I'll speak for us in the sense that the library discussion is obviously important to us, hence having Mr. Mike Kavanagh come and address us this evening, and we'll be in a position to formally discuss and vote on our support on the one way or the other on the 24th of February, once now that we've had that opportunity to informally meet, and Mr. Mike Kavanagh will then follow up with the formal request to us. The second bit about the councillors, good question around if you're not online, actually, where do you find that? And actually, perhaps there's an opportunity to link in with Mike Kavanagh around some sort of display, poster, leaflet that could go in the libraries or leisure services around Milford Haven. Or notice boards, yeah. Yeah. Well, we used to have them outside the town hall, didn't we?
Sorry,
Yeah, Madam Secretary.
I've printed out a list of our councillors, and that's on the notice board outside Cemetery House.
Okay.
I've also been in touch with Pure West Radio because they have a new initiative. They've asked to see council minutes, receive council information. So I've asked Pure West Radio if they can do something to help with councillor visibility. And I understand he just left, but if Mr. Sinclair at the Herald could maybe assist in any way with this.
Yeah, no problem. But I think engaging with Mike would also be useful.
Yeah.
That's heartfelt.
Your press release, local newspapers, and these are your council of people, maybe you can take it.
Good idea. You have another suggestion, Councillor Sharp?
Not another suggestion, just echoing what we've said about, and I think it's great it's going outside the cemetery, but I think it should go to several organisations, community hubs, social centre, up at Hakin.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Anywhere that's a community access area.
Yeah. Councillor Crowe?
The local authority, housing and assets, because we are the biggest housing, like social housing in Milford. If you give them the details, they'll popular, they do monthly letters.
Okay, thank you. Next question then is from Leanne Allen. Would Milford Haven Town Council consider gap funding Milford Haven Library through the use of funds held in reserve by the council to enable services to remain as they do at present? And will Milford Haven Town Council ask Pembrokeshire County Council to pause the current consultation regarding Milford Haven Library whilst current talks are ongoing regarding the 2 proposals that are currently being considered? So there's 2 elements to that. I think that the first one has already been answered based on Margaret's question, actually, where we'll be in a formal place on the 24th of February to vote and discuss as a council our position, but we've had the informal discussion this evening. So hopefully that satisfies that question. The second element around the consultation being paused is interesting, I guess. I think it's a difficult one to answer unless anyone else has something to add in the sense that obviously we've been made aware informally, obviously it's not in writing yet, that how much we would need as a minimum to support the library remaining status quo for this next financial year. So that consultation around those proposals would be although they complete the consultation, wouldn't be required as such because we would be investing in that year. So whether there's a formal position that we need to adopt over the way forward as a council is the question. Councillor Jones?
I thought, struggling to focus from one to the other. Be it all possible for, like, to give us a breakdown of costs for the library and electric, do you know what I mean? So we know what it is we're actually cutting otherwise,
Yeah, we can ask that.
you know, overall wages, I know specific people, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, we can ask that. Have we got a view on the consultation element? Councillor Gray?
Well, that is normally a 90-day consultation, that they lead out. But to answer the public's question, I would say we are looking into this and we will update everybody after our next meeting on the 24th. We will have a better understanding and financial awareness of it.
Okay. Yeah, Councillor Sharp?
I think, thanks, Mike. I think any consultation is a good thing. And I think it's given the public given them better chance to actually see what's going on and have the option to comment. And who knows, in one of these consultations, some ideas may come to fruition that could be very useful. So I certainly wouldn't hold them. I mean, we're only talking 2 weeks before we may make a decision. And if it's favourable, then obviously it will result in good outcome. So I would be against stopping any consultation.
Okay, Councillor Jones.
With the, I'm trying to find my wording here. If we're to pay out of reserves, obviously we can't change the precept. Is there a way to make it clear to everybody, really, that if that's what we do, that we're doing that, but next year, you know, that's coming from reserves, but next year it will have to come out from publish.
I'm not.
Council tax.
I don't quite understand how that links to the consultation question.
It's not about the consultation.
No.
Once the whole.
Yeah. Obviously, yeah. The discussion around how that affects us in terms of the funding will obviously come on the 24th. But okay, I think there's no desire at this current moment for us to ask the county council to pause that consultation. I think the bit that's really important for us as a council is the 24th, where we'll formally decide to support or not. And if it is favourable, then that consultation is almost null and void, because it talks around the community managed library. There was another word that I'm missing from that, but use of volunteers rather than some employed staff, for example. So and I think Councillor Sharp is right. The consultation needs to be allowed to continue at least until we've made a decision one way or the other. Okay, the next question from Claire Evans. As you're aware, Milford Haven Library is an incredible asset to our town, providing vital services for education, well-being and community connection. Given the uncertainty surrounding its future, will the Town Council commit to working proactively with Pembrokeshire County Council to ensure that our library remains in its current location in a building that is perfectly suited to its use and already has a lift, etc., with its full range of services and staffing intact? I think it's a similar question to the last two, actually, in terms of we are committed to working proactively, hence having Mike here informally this evening. And then the formal decision from the council in terms of our support or not, depending on the outcome of the discussion and vote, will be made on the 24th of February. There was a carry-on question to that, which was actually more suited to when Mike was here. I didn't ask it directly because he covered it, but just for transparency, I'll read it out. And it was, it is currently a library to be proud of. We should be making the most of what we already have. could we consider renting out the current book sale room as a cafe or an indoor market space, etc. Moving would have many additional cost implications to consider. What practical steps can you take to support and protect this valued facility for the benefit of residents of all ages? So just for transparency, we didn't read that question directly out because Mike had already covered that in the questions and answer session that we had with him. So that is stuff that is actually being considered. Here we are. So that is agenda item 3. So agenda item 4, news from the Mayor. I haven't actually got anything other than to remind councillors that Thursday is the memorial to the fishermen service at the cemetery, and I'm just looking at the secretary to remind me the time. 12.
Thursday, the 13th of February.
Yeah, 13th. Thursday the 13th at 12 o'clock at the cemetery. So if you are able to attend, please. Agenda item 5 then was the Mayor's engagements. They have been sent out today. So unless there's any questions, no. Agenda item 6, questions without debate pursuant to standing order number 6.
We haven't received any, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 7, minutes of the meeting of the full council held on the 27th of January 2025. We've got a seconder and all those in favour. Okay, thank you. Agenda item 8, to receive reports, recommendations and resolutions from the following committee. I'm looking at the chair to recommend. Okay, so the grant review meeting, and we'll go page by page for this one. Page 141. Page 142. Page 143 and page 144. Councillor Sharp.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, for those councillors that obviously were present at the meeting, or the meeting before, yeah, I think we should just update the councillors that a lot of progress was made in the earlier meeting. And I think that we'll be presenting at the next meeting will be very useful.
Okay, does someone want to propose the minutes then? Okay, so have we got a seconder?
Yeah.
All those in favour? Okay, thank you. Yeah, just to reiterate what Councillor Sharp said, the draft policy, grant policy, the new one will go to full council on the next meeting for ratification. Agenda item 9, representation on outside body, Milford Haven Community Primary School. We're looking for an additional community governor to represent the council on that governing body. Do we have anyone interested?
Who is it at present?
There isn't one, but it was formerly me.
Oh. I couldn't.
Okay, there is 7 councillors missing tonight, so we'll defer it one more time before we go back to the authority.
Right, okay, yeah.
Thank you. Agenda item 10, live streaming at town council meetings. Councillor Bridges, I'll open the floor to you.
That's what's been put on the agenda for a couple of reasons. I mean, the main reason I wanted to put it on is because recent period has happened where something in our minutes was taken out of context, and the general theme of that conversation was not reflected in the minutes. And ultimately, I feel by having our full-time council meetings live broadcast, we have to be very mindful of the fact that we've now made a decision as a council that councillors are being quoted in the minutes by name, and therefore, if minutes are not taken down exactly in the manner which they've been spoken, things may be taken out of context, which has to do. So ultimately, I personally would be extremely comfortable with being live recorded because I want to be held accountable. That's why I'm here. I'm here to represent the public, not myself, not my personal agendas, but what I think is best for the town. So ultimately, sometimes I'm not going to say the right thing because nobody's perfect. And you really get that. But I think it's got to let you know when your heart's in the right place.
Yeah.
That's very hard to take away from written minutes. Personally speaking, I'm looking at another town council recently being named, and there was a lot of bad PR because a live walk was not broadcast because they were expecting it, and they got me thinking, oh, actually, you don't do that anyway. But I actually quite welcome it because I think it holds people accountable for what they say, and moreover, it gives the public a wider understanding about what we do and the time we give back to the town. So ultimately, I perfectly clear the fact that maybe everybody's not going to agree with that, but then I would ask you the question: if you're not okay with it, why? Because ultimately we are here to represent the public and ourselves. So surely we want the public to know what we're talking about and how we're talking about it.
Councillor Sharp.
I certainly don't have a problem, thank you, Mayor. I certainly don't have a problem with live streaming. We would just have to be very conscious that there will be subjects that we would need to, that aren't available for the general public. For example, when we're talking about wages of staff and certain things, so there would have to be some things. They could be left on the agenda at the very end of the agenda. We'd have to go into closed sort of council meetings. I don't have any problems. I think it would be easier to do an audio live streaming, which is what we've done tonight. An audio one will be because I haven't changed. I'm very worried about that. You always look my best. No, sorry, I just there. You don't mean it that bit, please. But I think technically doing an actual film thing may be a bit complicated. Looking at somebody that knows more technical than I do.
I noticed with our Zoom account, I've never used this this particular option myself, but there does seem to be a link to use YouTube to broadcast, well, to simulcast, is that the right word, the meetings via YouTube. We do have a YouTube channel. Admittedly, it's not very active. I think we've got 2 or 3 videos on it, but it's not very active.
Sorry, if I could just to expand on my point away. It could also be not live, but the actual video recording of it embedded on our website after we do with the minutes. And I'm open to that as an alternative rather than being a live broadcast. Just so there's some record of actually what we say rather than just the written minutes. I'm flexible on the point, but it's just I was just wanting the public to actually hear us directly.
Councillor Hartevelt.
Personally, I agree completely with Councillor Bridges. I think we are all here to represent the public, and with written minutes, things can be taken out of context. It's people's perception of how they read it, when it's looked at, and it's no different than a member of the public to be present. They are allowed to be present.
Yeah.
And I do think for possibility and just for transparency, that I think it's a really good idea. Maybe the YouTube thing, like you said, embedded in the minutes on the website, people can, so it's not really live streamed, although that would make a difference. I do think we kind of need to move at the time a little bit. And
Councillor Woodward.
The only thing I mentioned is before, if we're going to do it, we really should get that expensive, a proper little camera tripod and microphones that properly broadcast and we're going to do it. Because just a little laptop on the front is not ideal. It needn't be a big fancy setup. There should be something to it, at least look semi-professional, doesn't it? I wholly support the idea. Just to clarify, are you on about committee meetings as well? Or just main council meetings on that?
Because ultimately there is no there's a lot of bad feelings about council. For instance, I'll give you an example of something that a conversation about this week. And it was relating, members of the public thought that we, or a member that I spoke to, thought that we were responsible for budget at the library, and ultimately it's down to us. They don't understand the difference between town and county. There's a big lack of understanding between what a councillor does. For instance, somebody has also said to me, well, come on, you're getting paid to do it. No, I'm not getting paid to do this. Actually, it's taking time away from my businesses, my family, and I'm completely free of charge. Oh, I didn't realise that. And ultimately, it's a case of the public do not understand what we do. I'm still learning a year down the road of rejoining some of the intricacies of what goes on here. So for any of the public to have an understanding about what we do, what we're discussing, they won't learn unless they're given the opportunity to. And quite rightly so, because many people might not watch it, but then they have the opportunity to, and they can have the opportunity to learn and at least have an appreciation. So people might be as critical of us in the press because they understand that we're at least trying within the limits that we have to try and better the town, which is what we're all here for. Maybe then other people might get an appreciation and want to take part and, you know, stand in future elections. That's what democracy is all about. So I just think it would be beneficial for
Councillor Gray.
Totally agree, and with your point you made earlier, Mr. Mayor, is that people will be able to see who is who. And
That's a good
especially,
point.
pardon me, because I haven't got mine on tonight. If we've got our badges on and our names, then at least they can see. But my only issue is they might go off and say something because they've watched that meeting when they're not, these won't be adopted until the following meeting. So they haven't been approved and adopted as a true record until the following meeting. So you lead us to be questioned, well, you said this, you said, well, it's been adopted yet, it's a true record, do you know what I mean?
But I will. I know there's some more questions, and obviously I've not made comment, but just on that, we already upload the draft minutes before the formal adoption,
Yeah,
which
that's the issue.
yeah, but that's a requirement of us. The difference now is that the chair of that committee, or myself, the full councils, I say me, whoever the mayor is, because you know in the future, will have to check those draft minutes before they go live on the website. So there is now a a two-factor authentication to our minutes. Yeah, Councillor Sharp.
I think it's very important because I appreciate, I can hear Eric Harris saying it now. Well, we don't have this actually, but one of the county councillors told me that they broadcast theirs on a Thursday, which is when they have a county council meeting. But then a lot of people said, well, we're working when you're doing that. So can you then therefore put a recording of that so we can gain it at any time? So I like the idea more so of making sure that we do record it and put it so the general public can access it at any time. Otherwise, not everybody's available on a Monday night to watch our meetings or whenever a sub-meeting be. So I think it's very important that we do have some facility that they can look at it and
so really to use just spent money as a town council investing in a new website. If we embed YouTube links, Google is going to like that. We're going to push the rankings of the website up. Therefore, we're two birds with one stone. You know, so ultimately using that method will also improve the actual visibility of the website in general. So that again is a win-win.
Yeah. So two bits from me then, having listened to everyone. Our standing orders already allow us to do this essentially. In terms of broadcasting our meetings, because members of the public can attend. We already allow broadcasting with permission of the council. We just don't often get asked for a link. And of course, you know, we've had a couple of people visit this evening, and we've had, I think, 6 or 7 dial in, which I think is fantastic actually. And maybe that option of live streaming, recording it and putting it up, or whatever that might be, might encourage people to understand what we actually do here. So that's already in place. So there's not a radical change to standing orders. The second comment for me would be, and Councillor Woodward's already stressed it actually, is making sure that we've got that equipment. So this evening, obviously, technology aside in terms of the TV, because it's part of the venue that we're hiring, it's my personal laptop, my personal microphone set, but we would need something better to ensure that actually all of you are captured, because I'm not sure, no one has actually commented, but have they been able to hear you fully tonight at the other side of the room? Because I've made sure it's concentrated, you know, particularly on the speaker before, but we might need to consider one or two at least, and a better camera system to be able to see everyone, because we have only just used that laptop camera tonight. But that's all stuff that can be worked out. But that's just my comments. Yeah, Councillor Hammett, I know you had your hand up.
Totally agree with broadcasting, totally up for that. And I do think you touched on it. I think we need to find a way, and I don't know the solution, something to give thought to. How do we promote what we do? How do we promote what we're actually responsible for?
Yeah.
And what we actually have influence on? Because although we can make our voice clearly heard to Pembrokeshire County Council, we don't necessarily have the final decisions, which you quite rightly said. I don't think people get that. So I've often been asked things like that as a town councillor, why can't you do this, why can't you do that? And it's like, as though you think, I totally understand why public think, Milford and Library, well, that's what the Milford town council is talking about. It must be all down to them, I totally get that. And I had no knowledge until I joined the council myself. I had no knowledge of what a town council did.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. So maybe as a council, how we could promote that. I remember we have some cheesy promotional video where they go, well, this is what we do. No, I'm not in. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's something maybe everyone can think about, and maybe come back to it.
Yes. So just a point, and I'm just double checking with the secretary then.
Yeah.
Our task and finish group, which actually meets before full council on the 24th of February, is focused on our
3 to 5
5-year
year
plan.
action plan.
And that's very much part of that. So the secretary's going to make a note of actually how do we promote that, because that should be part of that action plan. Yeah.
Mindful about it, it's my proposal I put in this forward, and I just thought of something in my mind that might make it easier. But again, reflecting on why I said this about Nathan, I noticed that one frustration is the lighting in the room.
Yeah.
So I'm going to amend the proposal if I may, because I think it will make it easier for this town council to achieve what I'm trying to.
Okay.
I would propose that we do recorded meetings and impose embed in YouTube and written minutes when they get posted live. However, retain the current method that anybody wants the live link that we provided. Because I'm mindful of the fact that if we are committing to a live link and every meeting is difficulties, I could then hold the meeting or cause activity. So I think if we've got the step in the right direction, so we can get that working right, we can review that and later, at least we then have the recording of the meeting. People will have the right to request a link if they wish to. At least the first step. If we get that right, then we can at least feel like we pass down the road, but at least move in the right direction.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jones? Yeah.
Similar background, I said like Nicola and I, being new councillors, would really know the ropes and government. Yeah, we started afterwards. We said it'd be an idea to do some kind of podcasting thing where we actually ask questions of the mayor, which was in.
Yeah.
So,
can you make it?
Clarify things, I think obviously we know a little bit more.
So the secretary has literally just made that note, and that will go to the task and finish group. Yeah. Say that again.
The podcast, you Joe Rogan another one. Yeah.
I'll give it a go. Yeah. We'll add that to the task and finish discussion actually, because that's all part of that promotion action plan. Councillor Harteveld.
I don't know, again, it's offering us our time. They could do like a meet the councillor session, maybe down at the library, for anybody who's willing to do that. So the public can access us, because obviously not having a town.
I'm going to beat you. I'm going to beat you.
Cemetery House is not a venue that people can come up and visit. Whereas if we were down the library, say, people could come and ask questions and,
yeah, like that.
We'll be accessible to the public. We're not accessible on things.
So we'll make a note of that again for the task and finish group. Just for clarification and people listening, Councillor Sharp, you were implying that you were trying to get ahead of Councillor Gray, not trying to beat her up.
Does that you?
I was going to apologise, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Sharp.
But so, Mr Mayor, I do apologise, but I looked at Councillor Gray and I know exactly what Councillor Gray was thinking. Councillor
That's what
Gray,
we are.
myself and Councillor Woodham for Milford East did several surgeries or whatever you want to call
Yeah,
it.
surgeries.
On the Mount, down at the Pill. We had no attendance at any of those.
No.
So I mean, I'm not against doing what you say. I think we should leave ourselves open. But we offered that service and nobody.
Police did, did you not belong to?
Yeah. Okay. And you'd be surprised considering it was the Mount and sort of.
So, sorry, just coming back to a point. So we've actually gone off on topic. So the promotion aspect of it will be discussed at the task and finish group. If anyone's interested in joining that and you're not on that, please let the secretary know. Some really valuable discussion there, but I'm just trying to rein it back in. So in terms of the proposal, Councillor Bridges has proposed that we record our meetings and then embed the link in our website at the time of our draft minutes going live. However, we continue with a live link as and when we're requested, as we do now. I'd just like to add an amendment, if I can, in terms of making sure that it's recorded properly, in the sense that the secretary, because obviously the clerk is unwell at the moment, that we explore the correct equipment to make that suitable, rather than reliant on personal equipment. Because, you know, if I was not here tonight, for example, who would have Fiona ran to? I don't know, but we just need to make sure that that is all set before we go live. So that would be my amendment, if I could. In which case, I'd be happy to second that, unless anyone's got any amendments to that proposal. Okay. All those in favour? Okay, thank you very much.
Can I just ask, do Pembrokeshire County Council do a live broadcast or they come from?
Yeah, and we'll save the recordings.
And as I said earlier, yes, and then we put it on so that people can access it.
Yes, thank you. Agenda item 11 then, councillor engagements. Councillor Bridges.
I will point out again, bring it back to the public model. So it's become acutely aware, thanks to Councillor Sharp for resigning from the police and prisons Port Welfare. I took the mantle of doing it, lost half a day of my time doing it, and was happy to do so. But it made me think, I got no platform to report back to any of you what I actually learned at that meeting or what was said, unless there is something on the agenda for me to do so. And also, there's nothing on the minute for the public to know that I've given my time for you to do that. Furthermore, several councillors here attended the library meeting last week again. There's nothing reflected in the minutes, so we've done that. So I just felt that it was appropriate that there is an ability at this meeting for councillors to put forward what, if anything, they have done since the last full-time council meeting in their council capacity. But there is a form of recording of the time you've given to that. So ultimately, it could be nothing, and ultimately you may not want to put anything forward in the meeting, but at least if you have done something in the council capacity, there's some way for you to record that, so that you can at least, the public can know that you've tried to give your time to do it. It's not about appreciation and being, you know, having your ego in class. It's about the fact that the public don't know. Unless there's a record, we don't know. My proposal would be that in addition to the mayor's engagements that are on every meeting, this is an agenda item, and for ease of efficiency, I would recommend that if like with the mayor's engagements, it is provided to the clerk or the secretary in advance of the meetings for ease of record keeping. So if anybody wanted the meeting recorded in the minutes that they've given their time to, send in advance, it can be captured in the meeting, but I would suggest it would be best practical send it in advance for ease of recording.
Thank you, Councillor Bridges. For me, there's two elements to this actually, and Councillor Sharp or even Councillor Gray, depending on how long ago, may recall a conversation, and I can't remember what the outcome is because it is a number of years ago, particularly around councillors who represent the council, Port Welfare Committee, Milford Community Primary School, Gellerswick, museum, etc. When you're representing the council, how often should we get feedback? Because actually we don't formally talk about that feedback, and we did go to a point where we did. But I can't recall when it sort of dropped off. You know, if I represented, and I used to many years ago, represent the council at the Port Welfare Committee, and I think they were 3 times a year off the top of my head, then 3 times a year I should give some sort of feedback, because you're doing that for and on behalf of us, essentially. So I think for me there's 2 bits to that, not just you've attended the library consultation as an example, but what in terms of the formal representation, how is that going? Is it worthwhile? You know, is there any feedback? Is there something that the council should be doing more to support that, as an example? So I just thought I'd chip that in there. Councillor Sharp.
Thank you. I very much echo the Bridges is stating. I think if we do attend an outside meeting, it's very important that that gets minuted in our minutes, because then people can see that we are giving up our own time. And for example, on one of your other questions, comments there, I haven't had one for nearly 2 years, which is, I've commented to them recently. I represent Valero, and when I went over to their community meeting for Valero, I actually then took notes and I wrote a report that was presented at the council meeting, giving feedback on what happened. I don't know if any of the older councillors remember that. So I think there's nothing wrong. I believe it should be done by the councillor, especially if they think it's relevant, to have a report, possibly written in advance, that could be given to the town clerk or secretary. I think it's a very good idea.
Thank you. Councillor Gray, you're next.
Yeah, I totally agree, especially if we're representing on outside bodies.
Yeah.
My only issue is if I'm doing something personally for somebody, like, for an example, last week somebody was about to lose their house, and as I was a local councillor, I spent nearly 10 days making sure, but as a councillor I was doing that, but to me that was a personal situation. I was still doing my council duty, but that's personal.
Yeah, I think
So and I spend more time doing that than I do on outside bodies, but to me, that's important.
yeah, Councillor Bridges will come back now, but I think for me, it's not necessarily around what you're doing as a councillor, but it's that public meeting site. So not, Councillor Gray has met with Citizen A to discuss why. It's more around, you went to the local youth club and did some engagement. You've been to a group, for example, or you went to whatever it might be. So it's not necessarily everything, but more of those. I'm saying formal, but the public representation.
It looks as if you're only doing jollies, not.
Well, it's not necessarily the jolly bits either. I mean, do you want to clarify? Yeah.
Actually, what can this really is, Mayor?
Yeah.
That is what I'm talking about, in the sense that if you can summarise that, in the sense that, by the way, like to let the council know, I've spent several of my days this month trying to help a tenant, being general.
Yeah, good point.
Helping a tenant trying to avoid eviction, whatever. Sorry, I don't know what you just said. That is a summary. Incredibly valuable for public note. So ultimately, because you have given your time to try and help a member of the community, this should be recognised. You know what I mean? So you can summarise that to make it very general, but at least have some recognition of the fact that you're trying as a councillor to try and do something to help the public.
I spend most of my time doing that.
But I'm saying, even though it's not formal,
that's a good point.
Generalise it and at least let so the public are aware that you have done a good deed by trying to do that, because you should be recognised for it.
Well, most of them do. They'll put something on Facebook, but I just do not put my name on there.
It's not giving bits of information. You can still summarise. You recognize that.
Councillor Hammett.
On that conversation now, we put that up. It could be almost something like the mayor's engagements, a list of the councillors, what councillors have achieved over that month. It's like you would have the mayor's engagement, you'd have councillors achieving, or councillors, what you call it,
engagements.
An equivalent to council engagement. You could have that. I represent the new council, and not for six old term, but I've been generally going weekly to their meetings and thinking about what they're doing in their events. Now, one part, I can't remember if it was, sorry, the clerk or secretary said we'd like to sort of come back every so often to sort of feedback what youth council is saying. Maybe we can sort of get things going sort of between the two, and I know a lot of councils talk about maybe matters as well, where that would be useful. I did it once, I spoke, I've talked about it, I haven't done it since, so I don't know if maybe we have a regular slot where each representative body sort of feeds back about what their particular group's doing. It might not work to have a regular slot for each one, because it depends on how often you are seeing them. But I already spoke to you the other day, so the youth council would love to have a debate with the town council. It could be anything like what came first, the chicken or the egg. But they just, they just said it'd be really good to just have a discussion about it, and in a formal way, and have a bit of fun with it. But of course, I could only kind of say that informally to the mayor at the moment, whereas it would be good if we could have, even if we haven't like any other business. I don't know why we don't have any.
We don't have any other business.
I know you can get flowers.
Eric turning in his grave.
Yeah, no, it's a good point.
By our wards.
Councillor Woodward?
Totally. I think it should possibly be more of a bit like there's engagements thing. I spent many hours, at least 10, probably a lot more, trying to get Manchester Square car park sorted out and tidied up. I didn't do it for me. I did it because somebody claimed they could claim that. And I thought, yeah, I'll take on board. But that effect is good for the whole council. And that's the point. It's not about the individual councillor, it's to show what we can achieve as a collective. And it promotes, and yeah, why should I say this? I am Milford Haven Town Council, this
Okay, so yeah, no, thank you for that. I think to aid some progress, I think I'd personally like to make an amendment if I can. So the original recommendation is that we propose a standing agenda item would be added. So would be after the mayor's engagement, so would be the future agenda item 6 as councillor engagements, and that would be provided in advance to the office and then shared as the mayor's engagements are done. The amendment I think I'd like is that formal piece around the outside bodies, and Councillor Hammett has perfectly summed it up well. We spoke via message around the youth council wanting to come and engage with us, but how do we formally do that as a council without making it a formal agenda item? And I'm not necessarily saying it has to be every council meeting. So, if I was to propose, for example, once a quarter, there's an agenda item that would be representation on outside bodies feedback. And then we can go through the list. Councillor Bridges, would you like to talk about the Port Welfare, Youth Council, Councillor Hammett, Museum, Councillor Sharp, whoever else is doing that? And there might be that quarter where you don't need it because you haven't met or it's not applicable, and that's fine. But those that want to can do, and it gives us that formal opportunity at least once a quarter. We can then amend it as we see fit in the future for that formal point back, any feedback, or actually we will recommend tonight that, February the 24th, I know that's full council, would be the date that we'll go and see the youth council or whatever it might be, but that gives us that open dialogue then for the future. So that would be my amendment.
Right, to clarify.
Yeah.
Are you suggesting limiting it purely to outside works, or?
Yeah, so.
Like having salaries?
No, so council engagements, that would be where that goes, but the outside bodies representation. So if you're representing the council at another body, let's get some formal feedback on that, because I think that's really important too. Councillor Jones.
Slight amendment.
Okay.
Amendment on the amendment.
Is, I mean, you 3 times a year or something like that, you said?
Yeah, that particular. Yeah.
Why not just put that information in when it comes, and that just gets kept or put into the minutes as and when, rather than, possibly leaving it 2 months to actually bring it up.
That's what he intends to do.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah, some of it's not relevant. Yeah.
So
I would like an opportunity to spend 5 minutes telling you what I am. I'm quite happy to do that. I'd like to do that today. But obviously, it's a case of, there was one thing I learned today, I was quite shocked. Which I bet nobody here, apart from Colin, who's been previously, probably would know that. So I would like an opportunity to say what I know in that meeting quickly. But I certainly wouldn't spend the time typing it up, because it was.
Yeah, I don't think it needs a formal report unless anyone wants to do that. Yeah. So yeah, that feedback for me would be, we would have, say, 10 minutes, a couple of minutes each for those that need it and those that might not need it. Which is why I think once a quarter to test the water. Councillor Shaw?
I think it's more important to have a verbal conversation at a meeting, because then that's opening up to questions and answers. If you're looking at a written document, that's great. That's giving you information on what happened at that meeting, but it's not giving you the option to ask any questions.
And dare I say it, an easy way to say move receipt rather than engage with that dialogue.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Councillor Harteville?
On the proposal, I was saying that there are engagements.
Everything and anything.
There's going to be a separate one to the representation of
So at every full council, there will be a council engagement agenda item, is the proposal. The second part of that proposal is once a quarter, there'll be the representation on outside bodies feedback, verbal, if you like, verbal feedback, where we will then have the opportunity to, I've been to X meeting on behalf of the council, and we discuss this, or you might not have anything, and that's fine. But I think unless we have that opportunity, there'll be no opportunity. Yeah.
Somebody could agree that that's been worded.
Okay.
If it was on every meeting.
Yeah.
For instance, just use it as an example. When just being that or like it's fresh in my mind.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to wait for 3 months, I may forget. Whereas if it was on every meeting, there may be no outside bodies to report, and therefore we can just move straight to the item that we do now.
Okay.
Whereas,
as I said, I was testing the water with a quarter, but if you want,
in my own mind, that's how I use it. Because if it's only once every 3 months, I might actually,
okay. Okay, so I'm happy to amend it then to every meeting. Yeah. Huh? There we go. So yeah, so that would follow councillor engagements for argument's sake. Yeah. Cool.
So can you just tell us what the amendment and
so the recommendation is that council engagements will be a standing agenda item, which will be provided in advance to the office and then shared in the same way that the mayor's engagements are. The second part is that representation on outside bodies feedback, which is verbal, will also now be a standing agenda item.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we've got a proposal, we've got a seconder, all those in favour.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And you'll be delighted to know that, go on then, Councillor Bridges, I'll give you that opportunity. Yeah, go on. Go on then.
Yeah, so we're going to pull up on the meeting, and the whole council. As Dave said, I'm not knowing what happened, but I got through under the bus. So I went into the meeting, and first when the chair went around and said, I have a report from the Nottingham Town Council. Right, okay, so I wrote all, it was like literally, so it was, I was very much on the spot with about 20 men in the room, like all looking at us. And in fairness, they took pity on me because it was kind of a case of, but it's worthwhile knowing that we are going to take the mantle on a role, but knowing in advance what was going to be expected of us. But one of the things that I did, I'm really joking, I don't know if that's what you were going on. The other thing, just what was worthwhile knowing, I completely interested back in that meeting, which I have no idea. One of the gentlemen on the committee is Reverend Ruthless Roy, who's in charge of the sailors' welfare.
Yeah.
And he took the time to come and speak to me during the meeting. And he said that, he explained that obviously the seafarers picking up with his outflows is currently £1 but that service cost them £100,000 a year for Wales, and they've only actually got funding for 10. They've got a 90% funding gap to sort of provide any sort of care to the sailors that come in and stuff. And he explained to me that just one of the ships that came into port this week, last week as it would be now, the gentleman has been on that ship. I always thought they were well paid, tankers. that was my assumption, I didn't know when I was reading, but they're very, the captain and the not apparently the ship, they are right, but the sailors on that ship have been on there for 7 months, with no internet, no TVs, and we're only allowed a 24-hour turnaround in the port, therefore we're not allowed to get off the boat even though we're here.
Yeah.
So the environment they're working on, they're coming into our territorial waters, they're not subject to our employment. I knew none of this until that meeting. So I just think it's worthwhile, I don't know, I'm just saying it's out there, but on the limited opportunity that those sailors do have a chance to come into the military, I was quite shocked to hear the problems that they're encountering. So Mr. Garland, who does the boat trip, and he was saying that basically they come to shore. Sometimes they're not very well received by the public anyway, because of their nationality. Sometimes they said that they don't have a very good experience, or there's nothing really set aside for them. He said that. He gave one example. I thought it was really maddening, but he was taking them to Phoenix Bowl. We took them to Phoenix Bowl, and I didn't sound ridiculous. I don't report that, it's as it was said, but I think they were Filipino, the sailors in this particular boat. They've never seen a blonde child, never seen one. And they asked for a photo of this blonde child, and it was taken out of context from the request. And he said that, that it's very hard in the current day and age to know, how to take things, but it was very fascinating to hear that we see all those big tankers pulling up here all the time, and naturally assume it's all hunky-dory, but in fact it's a very unusual experience for them if they do get to come on. I was obviously representing Milford, and you come here, you look after the cruise ship you come in, but don't think about that. I didn't even think about it until now, so I just thought it's worth about everybody knowing what I knew, because I didn't know it until that day.
No, thank you, Councillor Bridges. Yeah, that a perfect example of what our outside representation feedback will be. So yeah, I'm glad. Yeah. Share. Yeah. So all that leaves is meeting closed. Thank you very much tonight for your participation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.